Oh, hey, how's it going? Sorry, I was just playing Monster Hunter Rise demo on my Switch. Highly recommended. But you know what would make me a little bit more excited about Monster Hunter Rise? If I had something a little bit more powerful to play it on. So today I wanted to tackle talking about the Nintendo Switch Pro unit that's been covered in the news a lot lately. I kind of want to make a breakdown of what to expect from what we're hearing and give everyone kind of an update on what's going on with that. So if you'd like to join me for a few minutes, I'll take you through all the articles, all the rumors, and we will take a look at what Nintendo may have to offer this year. Of course, there were rumors going as far back as August 24th. Saying that there was a planned upgrade coming into play at the end of this year to compete with the PS5 and Xbox Series X/S. That was kind of the start of it. These rumors were coming from Takashi Mochizuki. Apologies if I butcher that name. He's a pretty notable journalist, though. He covers a lot of stuff related with Japan and sales and tech. So he's a relatively trustworthy source for this kind of stuff to come from, which is why this news is juncturing such a response. But the thing that makes it more interesting was this article put up. Of course, I have the Reddit breakdown here because I'm not going to pay to read Bloomberg's article. So 2 weeks ago, we saw this, the expectation of what to see. And we were actually seeing probable proof that this was in the works with Nintendo teaming up with Samsung to create these OLED panels for the new unit. Now, Samsung, of course, makes a lot of phones with OLED panels, although they are AMOLED and not traditional OLED, which I don't actually know too much of the difference between that. I know AMOLED has a tendency to burn in quicker than OLED, but AMOLED's also quicker to manufacture than OLED, which is why they usually put it on their mobile devices. But we've definitely seen actual OLEDs be pulled off with like the newer iPhones. Those are using traditional OLEDs. But Samsung, working on these OLEDs, as we're seeing here, they plan to unveil a Switch equipped with the bigger OLED display this year, probably holiday time. The size of it, which I thought was kind of interesting, would be a 7-inch 720p display. A lot of people were kind of expecting a higher resolution display, but honestly 720p does make sense at this size and for them to get that consistent frame rate when taken off of a power source, because as you know, when Switch is docked and it has that more consistent power source from the dock, they traditionally raise the resolutions to something like 1080p, which is why some games actually run better undocked than they do docked, and vice versa. One thing that I noted here was that the screen size would be going up to 7 inches. Now, I believe I had, that's why I had the tech specs pulled up here. The size of the current screen is 6.2 inches. So if you're wanting to see like a visual comparison here, here, I'll pull my camera up. This is, of course, the Switch, and this is an S21 Ultra, which is a 6.8 inch display. So still a little smaller than the size we would see, and you can pretty quickly see how big of a difference this is. So yeah, you can see right here that there's a pretty sizable difference here on a 6.8 inch display versus here versus a 6.2 inch display. So that's kind of one of the things we could expect. And of course, with the OLED Switch, if you don't know the difference between LCD and OLED, LCDs have a backlight. The OLEDs are a self-lit panel. So the pixels on the OLEDs are generally better lit, like darkness. You can get blacks on there, and it can bring out more depth in an image and better colors. Those are kind of the big differences there. So let's flip back over here and kind of tackle the rest of this. They're hoping to launch closer to 4 to 6 million available. The OLED panels will consume less battery. This is also another big advantage of OLED, is that it generally consumes less battery power than an LCD, and the faster response time. Although not as fast as QLEDs, which is one of the advantages of going with like a Samsung TV. Nintendo's got to go with rigid OLED panels for the new system since they're cheaper when compared to flexible OLEDs that's used for phones. That's interesting. The latest model will come with 4K ultra high def option for TV display, and new Switch could also offer thinner bezels, which I think would be great because I do like when there's like nothing to the side. That's very nice. So the big telltales here was there was a bit of confusion. 4K ultra high definition option for TV display, but still only 720p. This starts making people think that this is not a revision or like a new model like the Xbox One X or the PS4 Pro, but that it may be just like a small upgrade, like a Switch Lite was, you know? They were just like, oh, this one works without a dock, and it has slightly better battery life. Woo. But the 4K ultra high definition makes you kind of think that, oh, maybe this is something big, or there's a new dock coming with it that may have a 4K upscaler in it, meaning it's just taking that 1080p image that we're used to on the current Switch and just blowing it up to a 4K image, which wouldn't make it really look any better. You can kind of tell it'll still look grainier, it'll still look a bit more pixelated, I guess would be the word for it. Not really pixelated, because it's kind of hard to tell the pixels at that distance, but this was the first article that really got people talking. It's coming from a notable source, and that's why people were interested in it. Then we have a new one, this one up today, and this was to one of the Bloomberg like terminal subscribers. It was kind of like an insider discussion. Here are some more details that were dropped. They reiterate holiday launch for this year, which, if I remember correctly, the original Switch was kind of announced like pretty short before launch. The Switch was announced October 20th for a March release, so 5 months. So if they're releasing this, say, November or October, we could realistically see it by like May or June, which is kind of why this makes sense that this is starting to ramp up and be interesting now. The hardware sales will either remain flat or grow slightly due to revision. Yeah, who knows on that one. Higher expectations are placed on the Switch Pro, that's what it's referred to in the article, than the PS4 Pro, which sold 2 million launch window. The launch quarter, September to December, could reach up to 12 million units sold. So it could be as early as September, but this is just the quarter. It's not saying that it's going to launch in September and go out through December. So that's a little up in the air, but according to the hardware forecast, they speculate that the MSRP could be higher for the revision, up to 20%. So here is kind of an interesting talking point, that there is a good chance that the original Switch will be cycled out and this Switch Pro will actually replace it, because it wouldn't make much sense for this to only grow 20% if it's like a Pro version and not like replacing the current Switch, because if there's really only going to be 20% of $300 is $60. So like, who is going to look at the original Switch and say, oh, I'd rather save $60? You know, that just doesn't make much sense. So this kind of makes me think that it's going to replace it, and I'm seeing other comments say similarly. And the 20% is actually less than I thought it was personally. I was expecting a full $399 for this console. So actually it coming in at something like $359.99, not too bad. Another interesting thing too would be that it wouldn't be the first time they've done this like new version and replaced it. Well, not necessarily replaced it, but did a new version at a higher price. They did the same thing with the 3DS, where the original 3DS was $199, and then the new 3DS came in at like $229. Like, it was about the same margin, about 20 to 30% or whatever increase. Zelda is considered to be a strong launch candidate for the game. That would be interesting. They did still kind of tease that Zelda stuff is in the works, and it does kind of fall within the timeline. It has been 4 years now since that game came out. Apart from the DLC, which I believe was all released out like around a year after the game came out, the game's been in full-blown development for about 3 years probably. However, it could still be like a year out. I could totally still see it being something released on like the 5-year anniversary of Breath of the Wild. The performance of this revision is expected to be in line with the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. So this comment is kind of interesting because I'm not sure if it means that it's going to be about as powerful as the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, or if it's saying that the improvement over the original model is going to be in line with those. So the PS4 Pro was approximately like 3 to 4 times more powerful than the PS4, and the Xbox One X was approximately 5 to 6 times more powerful than the Xbox. So if we're looking at a Switch unit that is somewhere between 3 and 6 times more powerful, it's kind of a broad window there. But if they're saying it is somewhere in line with the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, somewhere between that, margin. That is a huge upgrade, The other thing too is that there's more talks about something called DLSS, which is a form of super sampling used in NVIDIA tech, which makes the GPU for the Tegra GPU unit for the Switch console. Their DLSS solution basically just takes an image at a lower resolution and makes it appear as if it's at a higher resolution. Sometimes it looks nearly identical, sometimes it looks a little worse, and sometimes it has even looked a little bit better depending on the game. Something like Death Stranding is one to look at, where it's like they actually made this game look better at some resolutions than without the DLSS. Now, if Nintendo is using this tech, then that would be really big. I know Xbox is at least talking about similar tech coming off of the AMD units that are inside of their consoles, but DLSS has been tested and is pretty authentic at this point. We know that it works very well on the games that allow it, and if it is on the Switch Pro and the Switch Pro starts selling like hotcakes just like the Switch does, then that's really going to push a lot of developers to want to work with this tech more, and will probably help bring it to more games, which is really good for the PC scape, and it's also really good for the Xbox scape and the PS5 scape, although I don't know what the extent of the super sampling stuff would be with the PS5. I know Xbox has at least talked about it a bit. I don't know that PS5 has it all, so... And this comment here kind of was like what I was thinking too, is that others are saying it's a simple revision with an OLED screen, 720p handle. I'm just ready for the damn thing to come out. So yeah, it's no one really knows for sure if this is a revision or like an actual Pro. And we can't really be sure yet, but from the sounds of it, from the base increase that we're seeing, from the price increase that we're seeing, this would essentially be a new 3DS to the original 3DS. It's going to be more powerful. It will probably have some games that are designed specifically only for it, and it will probably provide a couple upgrades to current games. I wouldn't be surprised to see games like Smash Bros, which we've already seen, Smash Bros and Animal Crossing, from their PC development kits, running at like 4K. There are 4K screenshots of these games that are published by Nintendo. So these games obviously can run at 4K. They have the capacity for it, they just don't have the hardware for it. Another interesting thing too that we're going to hear more of in the coming days and weeks is that developers have these dev kits. They have the Switch Pro model, and they're already working on developing games and developing upgrades for it. So that's one thing to definitely keep an eye out for, because as that stuff starts to leak out, we'll get a better idea of what kind of power we're working with here. Although dev kits can vary from what we'll actually see on launch day. So it's not going to be a guaranteed answer, but it's at least some information, and it kind of drives that hype, because there's a lot of Switch games. Switch has kind of definitely taken a back pedal as far as my go-to consoles. Xbox is kind of cheating with Game Pass, so it takes up the most of my time, but the Switch is only occasionally releasing things I'm really interested right now, even though I would say that the Switch is the most must-have console of any of the current systems, including last gen and the current gen. Even against the base PS4, I will argue that the Switch is more of a must-have. But yeah, that's kind of the current breakdown here. I'd like to see more confirmation of the DLSS, because that is a big thing. If this is using that form of super sampling, that is going to be huge for the gaming scape. The other thing too is I just really don't think it's going to be called the Switch Pro. They already have a Switch Pro controller, and that I don't think it's necessarily confusing, but it does kind of feel weird that they already have Switch Pro named to something, and then they would call something else, the Switch Pro. Personally, I would love for it to be called the Super Nintendo Switch, or the Super Switch. That would be kind of fun, but in all likelihood, and I'm about to say something that is going to upset a lot of people, but it's the truth and you all know it. This console already has a name. It's already been picked out. It falls in line with everything we know about Nintendo. Everything. It is going to be called the freaking new Nintendo Switch. I swear to God, if it is called the new Nintendo Switch, I will never buy a Nintendo product in my life. Don't quote me on that, because I'll break that immediately. But God, that's my full expectation right now, is that it is going to be called the new Nintendo Switch and cost like $600 or something ridiculous like that, because that is my perspective of Nintendo right now. But I just wanted to go over everything with that, explain some of the things that I felt like maybe getting lost or some people might not understand, and you know, it's just kind of fun to speculate. I'm excited to see. I hope Monster Hunter Rise gets like a 60 FPS version for this game when that comes out. I hope other action-focused games get like higher resolution, higher frame rate stuff, so it's easier to tell the details. Look at Apex Legends, for example. Apex Legends, you have a massive disadvantage playing on Switch right now, but if there was a Switch Pro that could make it more on par with like the Xbox One and PS4 that people are currently playing on right now, that starts to bring that, you know, now you have an alternative if you want to take these games seriously and use the Switch as a main console. Then there you go. Because the one thing that I think has always held the Switch back a little bit is that it's never been a main console. It's never been your priority console because it doesn't get as much third-party support as the PlayStation and Xbox, and your games that do come there through third-party support always play worse. So the Switch really needs something to make it competitive enough to really feel like it can be a main console for the core gaming audience. Of course, the casual gaming audience is perfectly fine with having a Nintendo Switch and that's it. I mean, there's a reason it's selling so well. A lot of its IPs are more iconic than anything, and its games are better than anything. Like, just flat out, you can look at the review scores for everything released on the Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, and the Nintendo Switch just consistently does not make bad games and consistently makes the best games. That is just like factually true if you're talking about like review scores and that sort of thing. So that's everything I had for today. Thank you for joining me. I'm trying to be live on Twitch as much as I can, especially as we're building up to Resident Evil and Monster Hunter, because I'm a big Capcom fanboy. So check out my Twitch if you want to hang out and talk to me more about these kind of things. Pick my brain a little bit, because I know a lot of neat stuff, I guess. Of course, I have some of the other friend groups and people you should check out in the description, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you guys around the corner. Peace.